Hey guys, today's video I wanted to talk a little bit about what my definition of leadership is, and I emphasize that this is just my definition. It should not be mistaken for the definition or what you should think the definition of leadership is. I think a very big part of these big buzzwords is what your definition of those words are, and that's why I think it's important that everyone has their own definition for these types of words: leadership, success, accomplishment, all those kind of things. It's important that you have defined that word for yourself because that's the only way you can really follow what the meaning of that word is for you. So, to just get into it, basically, the way I overall define leadership is that it's helping those you lead to be as successful as they can be in their respective positions. So, with that, I mean that, let's say, I'll use my own example of I was president of our school's American Society of Civil Engineers. The way I defined leadership for myself while I was in that role was that how successful were the other members of my executive board being and the members of the different competition teams that I was overseeing, all those kind of things. Their success and them being able to accomplish what they wanted to in those positions is how I define myself as a leader. I think that that's kind of like the general definition I give myself. Again, this is not the definition, doesn't mean it's the only definition, but this is how I define it for myself. Going a little further on that, I also think that it's very important that as a leader, you prepare the future for whatever you are leading so that whenever you are done being a leader at that organization or whatever it may be, it's in a good position for someone else to take it over as the next leader. This can include, for me personally, my role was being president of this American Society of Civil Engineers. That was when I picked it up, kind of dying. The organization was really just existing for the sake of the teams being able to compete. The organization itself didn't have meetings, it didn't have events, it didn't have any organization as far as when people were paying dues and all that. So I was able to help really fix things up with a solid database of future guest speakers and types of events and outlines for how to run those events, different guides for upcoming e-board positions on what their tasks specifically were, writing a constitution. And my biggest thing was I automated everything, just in the sense of everything is now on the computers rather than paper copies and just passing down knowledge. Realistically, if I fell off the face of the earth and someone had to take my position, there was enough information between like emails and Google Drives and files and all that they could figure out how to run a position with no prior experience. So that I think is a very big part of being a leader, is recognizing that you may not be the leader for the end of time and that you should be able to hand your position off to a future leader. I would also include with that you should, if whenever possible, be around to help that future leader take on a role. For example, the new president of our school's American Society of Civil Engineers is someone I'm decent friends with and stuff, and I have already reached out multiple times saying, hey, if you need help writing the annual report that's due, or if you need help setting up your first meeting and stuff, just let me know. While he was under me as one of my e-board members, he took on a very active role because I expected him to take on as the president the next year. So I was kind of grooming him for the past year, basically, to take on this position, which definitely has helped the transition, made it so that he could be more successful and the organization's more successful. And then the third point I'll throw in as to what I think defines a leader is working just as hard, if not harder, than everyone else that you're leading. So that's basically the whole leading by example trope, which I think is a very, very true thing. It's almost impossible for you to ask someone to do a task if you're not going to put at least as much effort into your own tasks. So in the way I've kind of done that is if I am assigning a person what I think is equivalent to about 4 hours of work, I will make sure that during that week I have at least 4 hours of work that I'm doing, if not more, like 5-6 hours of work. I think that this is the only way that things kind of seem fair. It's kind of that leading by example of even beyond the actual role of your position, leading by example of how this person should be acting outside of their role. So for example, big thing with our student organization was that it was very, let's call it frat housey, kind of no rules, no laws kind of thing. You were able to kind of do whatever you want. A lot of the stuff when it came to ordering materials for the competitions was just kids going out, shopping at Home Depot, saving their seat and throwing it on the desk of the department. I was able to kind of clean up some of that, I call it disrespectful behavior, but that's probably sounding a little darker than it actually is. I just made it so that things run a little more smoothly, more officially, things like that. And I did that in my own perspective. A lot of things, like, I knew I could very easily, for any given event, just kind of go out, buy the materials or whatever, come back and throw the receipt on the department's desk, and they would have had no problem with it because I've helped them out so much. They trusted me, all that. But I still went through the process of doing all the paperwork and stuff every time just to show that that's how things should be done. There's two very big points that it took me a little while to learn aren't what a leader is, and that's being a leader is not doing all the work because you think you could do it best. Even if that's true, even if you do all the work every time, you get it done in time, you do it better than anyone else could have done it, that's not being a leader. That's being a fantastic worker, but you're not being a leader in that respect. Like I said, I think a major part of being a leader is helping ensure that other people can do the tasks that are being asked of them and not you taking over their tasks for them. And then on the opposite side of that, being a leader is not delegating all your own responsibilities to other people so that you don't have to do any work and just kind of pointing. That wasn't an issue that I really had. The first one was definitely something that my first term as president, I took on a lot of people's jobs for them, and they never asked me to or anything. It's just I started absorbing people's jobs, and it made it so that they weren't able to grow as much in their positions, which is something I regret. The second one is something I've seen other leaders that I kind of oversaw do. Just delegating all their responsibilities to other people, making it so that other people had to work harder to carry their weight. Specifically, this was true with one of our competition teams. The leader didn't really do anything in terms of the competition. He just would make sure that there was enough people around to kind of do the work, which I guess maybe that was his definition of leader, so I can't judge it too harshly, but in my definition, that wasn't being a leader. That was being a delegator. So why did I go into this little rant about what being a leader is and all that? First of all, I think it's very important that, like I said, you create your own definition of these words, but also it's good to have a solid idea of what your values are and the definition of those values so that whenever you're questioning yourself as to what you should be doing, you have a solid definition to fall back on. So for me, if I'm doing the tasks and stuff, I feel I'm taking on a lot of responsibilities. I kind of think to myself, like, am I being a good leader by doing all this extra work, or should I be making sure that whoever's responsibility is to do this work kind of does their own work? Another thing that kind of influenced me to do this is the recent passing of Kobe Bryant. I will be honest, I don't know anything about basketball. I don't think I've watched a basketball game in my life, but that doesn't mean I didn't know about Kobe Bryant. He was an icon in his sport and an icon as a human being, really. I knew a decent amount about him because my friends and stuff were very into basketball, but a lot of more information that I wasn't fully aware of definitely came out after his passing, and I have a huge amount of respect for the man. I think that he is a great definition of what a leader should be, and that kind of was one of the things that prompted me to kind of talk about and think a little harder about like what my definition of being a leader is. So definitely rest in peace to him, his daughter, and all my prayers and stuff go out to his family as they deal through this hard time. But on that note, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. I'll see you all tomorrow for the next episode. Thank you.